Allison Bianco, and I'm an artist and a printmaker. I combine two printmaking processes, intaglio and screen print. So intaglio is copper plate etching. After I complete the etching, I go back into the work and add color with screen printing. I think something that makes my artwork recognizable or unique is the combination of the etching in the landscape with bright, playful colors and humor.
I think about the landscape as the truth. I think, like that's the true thing. And then it's all of those memories that come in different odd ways. I find that really interesting, so that's why there's comic interventions on top of just this like stoic landscape. So what I want people to know about me, I love ice cream in my coffee every morning. I'm really excited to be a local artist. I love Rhode Island. Even after leaving, I've always wanted to come back and live here. I like representing my state and creating that visual history. The first thing that I really fell in love with was screen printing. It was the big, bold, flat color. The fact that you could get color that had no stroke to it. I was kind of enamored with the way that sat against something that did have a lot of texture. So I started by making a lot of pencil drawings and then adding big pieces of screen print right on top of them, blocking things out or playing with the transparency of screen print. And that led into using that technique on top of intaglio.
Once I've collected all of the research material that I might want to look at, or the imagery, and I've made sketches, and I'm ready to start working on a copper plate, the first thing I have to do to prepare is to smooth the edges of the plate. This makes it so the edges are not sharp and it won't damage the blankets or the prints in the final printing. Then I put a layer of universal etching ground to coat the plate, which protects the copper. I use a metal scribe called an etching needle to draw the imagery into the plate. After the drawing is complete, I take the plate to the etching bath. That's the ferric chloride solution that will react with the copper and create a channel where the ink will then be able to sit. The plate usually stays in the bath from anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes to get a nice deep line that the ink will be able to hold into.
I was in Hawaii. I was moving very far from Rhode Island. And I also had recently lost my father. That was a real shift for me in terms of understanding who I was, understanding where I was from, and then being that far away from my home and knowing that home was very different now. That kind of piqued my interest in archive. It was personal archive at that point, but I was looking back at a lot of family photographs. And then I started looking at places that everybody might recognize, not just me.
After the plate is removed from the bath of the ferric chloride solution, the ground is removed, and then I can see the line and how well it has been etched. And if I want to add tone to the plate, I then have to do a second process called aqua tinting. The paper has to be damp, so the fibers open and they accept the ink very well. I carefully wipe the top layer of the ink off the plate, leaving the ink into the channels that I've etched.
As a kid, I always was down in Matunic. My grandmother had a beach house there, so, ocean was a big part of my life. There's a total mystery. It's so vast. It's so powerful. It's also the place where the sea meets the land. And those landscapes get altered by the ocean. I think there's an interesting, metaphor there for that thing that is kind of unpredictable, especially in a storm setting. I started thinking about the storms as the psychological storm, and the storm that was coming, but that the characters were ignorant of. This thing was happening in that same picture plane, but they were totally unaware of it.
You were interested in hurricanes, natural disasters?
Oh yeah, hurricane of 38. Yep, anything from Rhode Island especially.
I started looking at literal storms and how those literal storms actually impacted the inhabitants of Rhode Island.
I'm always thinking about the present and the past in tandem. When the groundwork is the past, or this historic or 100-year-old view or something that I wasn't there for, then I need to put some of the present into it, something immediate. These abstract colors, it's just very this is right now. And then, seeing how those things play together. It almost looks like a blueprint or a historic document, right? This thing that I add on top seems out of place. And it makes you question something. I take a piece of paper out of the water bath and blot it with a towel, and then put it on top of the copper plate, which is on the press bed. Roll the blankets back and then crank the press. Getting to see the print for the first time is always exciting, no matter how many prints I've made, because there's always a little surprise that I get to see. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. When the print is on the bulletin board, I start to make some decisions about what I want the composition to be and what I want to add into it. I take it over to my table and I start making and drawing the films for the screen printing. And then I use opaque black markers to fill in the areas that I'm going to want to screen print later. And then I go into my dark room to make and expose the screens. And I add a layer of emulsion, which is a light-sensitive emulsion, to it. Once it's all dry, I can bring the films that I've drawn down to the light table. Anywhere where there is the black opaque image, the light will not be able to get through to the screen, and that part of the emulsion will stay soft. I take the screen to the washout booth and rinse, and all of those areas where the emulsion has remained soft will fall away, and an open area of the screen will be revealed. And in that space is where the ink can get through.
Where I've seen a shift in my own work was from screen prints of shipwrecks into the sinking of Matunic. I was going from a very personal nostalgia into looking at the landscape in a very specific way. And then Leave Your Troubles Behind, which was the first time that I started exploring the corner pieces. And it's got this big yellow sun, and it has the advent of that creature. So it's the first time that a creature showed up. I used to put characters in the prints, people, whatever. They might have been my family members, whatever they were. But then there wasn't anything. There was like no humanity in some way. And so the little eyeballs or creatures brought that back in. They're also never really, I think, affected by what's happening. And then probably after that, later that day at Second Beach, which is the first time that I used one plate and reworked the plate over and over again. I'm using the same image number of times to create a larger piece. The audience wouldn't necessarily know that by looking at it. It's just something that I know, so it's like my secret.
So at this point, I'm ready to add the screen printed layers on top of the etching. And I print a layer onto the transparent paper. And then I can put the intaglio etching underneath and line it up. There's never just one layer of screen print. There's always multiple layers of screen printing. That process can last anywhere from a day to a few weeks if I'm trying to resolve a composition or decide, if something's right or if it's finished.
We're so delighted to have Allison's third show here in the gallery, and it's called Allison Bianco, A Bit of Weather.
The show represents my last 4 years of working in my studio. What do you like about this one so much?
Allison's work is very beautiful because of all the different textures that she's able to create within it. It's not only layered as a print, it's layered in terms of what you can see and how you see it. It's really interesting to note that although Allison is a Rhode Island-based artist and topographically lots of names like Matunic, Gaspee are relating to the coastal area of Rhode Island. However, it has a universal reach in it, and even though it's our scene, it seems to be everybody's scene.
If you want to know what's going on,